Okay, cool. So yeah, I just want to say thank you everyone for coming. Thanks all for your patience while we figured out audio stuff. My name's Nina Listro. I'm the interim director for the Carbon Ranch Initiative, which is one of our programs here at Quivira. Um, and just really thankful for Jorge for putting on this webinar. Excited to learn from him. I put in I said earlier, just some Zoom logistics, but just keep yourself on mute. If you have questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll be keeping track, and when we go to Q&A at the end, we'll go over those questions first, and then we'll open it up to the room. You can raise your hand and you can ask questions as well. And I put in the chat an evaluation link. I'll share it again at the end. It takes about 2 minutes to fill out, and we really appreciate it if you're able to do that. But yeah, I'll pass it on to Jorge for the presentation. Jorge, we can't hear you anymore.
What about there?
Oh yeah, I got it.
Okay, my fault, sorry. Okay, I'm ready.
Cool.
Well,
I can't see your screen anymore though.
let me...
And you're also welcome to email it to me and I can present it.
Maybe. So. The problem is that I had you twice.
I think you were sharing it from the other device you were on.
What about there?
Yep, now we can see it.
Well, a big apology for everybody. I know there's a lot of people waiting, and I'm not a very tech guy, as you can see, but well, can you hear me now?
Yep, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, and see the screen, okay.
Yep.
Well, hope to make this time worth your waiting. Thank you so much for your attention in advance. Virtual fencing as a tool for healthy soil, livestock productivity, and ranchers' well-being. Most of you are interested in virtual fences, but as the title says, virtual fences are just a tool. For what? For healthy soil. So I will base or focus most of my talking into the healthy soil part, because from a healthy soil, we will have livestock productivity and rancher well-being. But the base of everything is healthy soil. And at the very end, we'll talk about the virtual fences. By now, I would like to start by thanking Quivira Coalition, NRCS, and Western SAR. From Quivira Coalition, special thanks for Nina and for Eva Stryker. So who I am, I'm originally from Chihuahua, Mexico. I came to United States 12 years ago, and my company's name is Pisawak LLC. And what I do, I apply knowledge, experience, and technology to restore grasslands, hair efficiency, and profitability in ranches so we can face weather, markets, and tendencies. My motto is, by now, sustainability is not enough. We have done some recoveries from pastures in Mexico and in the area of Tamaulipas. And now, for 12 years, we've been working here in New Mexico. My conference will have this Y shape. It has two focus. I will start with one focus on how important grazing is, And I will do another focus on the same topic, grazing. When they both get together, we will talk about grazing, and at the very end, we will talk about virtual fences. So I will start by asking, are most of the ranches profitable? And by now, we're enjoying very good prices. But historically, the prices of cattle compared to the prices of, for example, for gas, the relationship has not been uh, even. We have this graph that shows how the price of the product that comes out of the ranches has not kept its value when you compare it to other intakes in the productivity chain. We've been through this kind of saddle, which is a saddle that took 30 years to go from 0.8, which means that with a pound of calf or steer, you can buy 0.8 gallons of gas. And now we're back into it, enjoying good prices. But we went through this saddle that went down to 0.3. So from here, according to my perspective, we have two options. Either the prices stay high, or what is more probable is we will go through another saddle like this that will endure 30 years when the offer and the demand of cattle gets to the level that it needs to be, the prices will drop again. So my question is, if by now, are we profitable? Can we stay profitable if the prices drop again, as they have done in the past? Or let me ask it in a different way. Consider all the infrastructure that is there in the ranches. All those fences, all those pipelines, all those pens, barns, houses. How old are they? Can we replace them in the next 20 years, even with the prices that we enjoy now? Is very tough. And to answer that question, I will make another question. Are our grasslands healthy? And the answer in most cases here in New Mexico, in also in Mexico where I come from, the answer is 90% or 95% no. Our grasslands are not healthy. That's why our ranches are not profitable. So how can we make our industry stronger? By now our industry enjoys a lot of support from the government. NRCS, FSA, and have very magnificent programs. What if those programs didn't exist? Will we be able to survive without them? We need to be stronger from ourselves, from our own, and enjoy the government programs, but on top of our strength. And how can we make this ranching activity more attractive for young generations? Attractive, I mean, some young people, they like ranching, but they inherit a several $1 million ranch to get a very few $1,000 salary a month. If they just sell the ranch and put all that money in the bank, they will get more money out of the bank than what they can do ranching it traditionally. So we need to find ways to make our ranches more profitable so they become more attractive for young generations to stay in them and have a good life. So if ranchers had 3 wishes for the industry, what most of the ranchers will be asking for? We are all looking for more rain. We are looking for more programs from the government or from the non-government organizations, or we are focused on the market. So these 3 are completely out of our reach. We cannot manipulate them. So if the main 3 things that keep our industry alive are out of our reach, well, there's not much to do. Well, the reality is that there is a lot of stuff that really is in our hands, and we don't pay attention, and we better do. That's the purpose of this webinar. Ranches, for me, are just like vehicles. The owner of each one of these cars or vehicles can say, I own a car, I have a car. Yes. There are different kinds and different styles, but not all of them are profitable. Maybe a luxurious example is not profitable or is less profitable than not so luxurious, but these vehicles are designed and are used for work and to make money. That's how our ranches should be. I'm sick and tired of seeing ranches like this, like a toy, and a lot of ranches are like this. They think they have a ranch, but they just have a wrecked ranch. So what I expect from a ranch, or what I from a ranch, I would like it to be profitable. Why? Because we want ranching to be a way of life, not a way to survive. Ranchers has a very important task to feed people, and we deserve a good living. We deserve a good house. We deserve vacation. We deserve a lot of stuff that by now, or in most cases, is out of reach because ranches are not as profitable as they should. How can we be more profitable? We need to be more productive. The profitability, if it comes from the government programs, that's the profitability that I will try to stay away from. I want the profitability to come from a high productive grassland, high productive cows, high productive steers. And in order to have productive grass, productive cows, we need to be sustainable. We cannot just pretend to do what we are doing for the next 2, 5, or 10 years. We need to think about our kids, grandkids, and the generations to come to be able to run cattle. I'm 50 years old, and I grew up in Chihuahua, Mexico. And during my lifetime, I saw the grasslands in Chihuahua become desert. I cannot go back to Chihuahua and do the kind of business that they were doing when I was a kid or when my father got the ranch when he was young. Why? Because the grass is not longer there. Sustainability was not taken into consideration. Which of these is more important? Which is the base of who? Sustainability is the most important deal. And then that's the base for productivity, and that would be the base for profitability. So if this is what I expect from the ranch, what I need to know in order to make the ranch profitable, I need to be a good manager. I need to have expense control, how to budget, how to assign funds for different projects, how to evaluate different projects, all what management requires. In order to be productive, I need to know animal science, nutrition, genetics, health issues, and everything. And in order to be sustainable, I need to know ecology. So it's very it's interesting that if you go to a library in Mexico or United States or Australia or any country and look for management books or animal science books, you will find books that say almost the same because management is the same here in China and cows are the same. But ecology, if you go to libraries, you will find different books that say different things and they will not agree with one another. Why? Because ecology is very specific and you have to go and learn it in your place, walking your country, and knowing how to read your plants, your stones, your soil, your everything. So let's imagine a ranch that has a road to the city, a driveway into the ranch, and the headquarters of the ranch. Let's see this ranch as a transformation industry. What comes into this through this gate. All this requires money, and that's what comes into the ranch. And what goes out of the ranch? Well, it goes meat out of a cow, out of a bull, out of a steer, a horse, a deer, whatever, it's meat. There's something very curious. This is our 100% expenses, but how much minerals that meat takes with it? How much fuel? How much payroll? How much equipment? Not much. So where that meat comes from? That meat comes from rainfall, sun energy, and minerals. So as managers, it's very important that we take care of these 100% expenses, but way more important is that we know what's going on with rainfall, with sun energy, and minerals, because 90% of this meat comes from these three elements. So that ranch is the basis of the pyramid that we just saw two phases, which purpose is to produce money. Let's see this in an integral way. We have soil. I don't know how many acres, maybe 100 acre or 100,000 acres, whatever area you have soil that receives rainfall. And with that soil, with rain, will produce vegetation, which will capture solar energy to produce forages. On that vegetation, you put your herd, and then you have supplements or medicines or like intakes, and then a program for feeding, health, genetics, stockmanship, and daily care. Each one of them can be considered can be seen separate, but as a group, they make an explosion, which is the reproduction. Part of that reproduction is what we sell. Part of those sales we get them in money, and part of that money is our profit. So that's an integral view from the soil through the herd through the bank account. We need to improve our knowledge and our monitoring system and our record system in all three levels. How to read the bank statement, how to read cow by cow, acre by acre, what's going on in all three areas. At the very beginning, sorry, I should have told you, I don't think that I will tell you anything new, nothing that you don't know, but many people have told me that the order of ideas, the sequence of thoughts in this presentation has helped them a lot in shaping their view of a ranch business. And I hope if only one or two of you learn something new about how to focus on your ranch as a business, I will consider this presentation worthy. So there are two clue points in this view. One is marketing, how you transform cattle into money. And this, you do it outside of the ranch. Either you make an agreement with your neighbor to sell the calves together, or buy a new sale or a new buyer, or label your product and make get out of the commodity market. But this is outside the ranch. The other clue point here is grazing, how you transform forages into meat. And this is very important. And this is where we are focusing most of our presentation. Why? Because around grazing will show like this. Nobody can tell me that this soil right here is bare ground because of a lack of rain. This grass tells me that it was the rainy season. So why there is no grass here? The reason is because in this corner, there is a drinker. So the cattle comes, drink water, they start walking. As soon as they see some grass, they lower their head and start eating. So at the same time, they abuse and kill some plants and do not use or waste other plants. that process, you add the factor of slope and you have erosion. So the bare ground is the enemy that we need to fight. If you think that you run 100 acres or 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres and you have soil like this or like this, well, you are not running 100 or 1,000 acres of grassland. You are running 100 or 1,000 acres of bare ground. And for sustainability in the long term, that really doesn't work. So let's see what happens if part of your soil is useless, is not capturing water, is not capturing solar energy. Well, the vegetation will grow only in the active soil. Only the active vegetation will produce forages. You think that you are running X amount of acres, you don't lower your herd, but the productivity of that herd will be reduced. So will be the sales, so will be the money, and the profit will disappear. Why? Because the little money that you got, you know what? I have to feed my cows more before selling. I have to feed my cows more so they get bread. I have to bring seed to recover my grassland. And in order for that seed to grow, I need to work my soil. You get very little money and a lot of ways to use it or to waste it. Why? Because of you have some bare ground. And the reason is that all the shape obeys the amount of productive soil that you have. So covering the bare ground is the most important task for the rancher. Again, nobody can tell me that this is bare ground because of a lack of rain. This grass tells me that it was the rainy season. Why was there not grass? Because of a lack of management. 2 years later, the same place, this bush is this fence is this bush is this one, and it was all covered with grass. These are my experiences there in Mexico. We will go to our experiences here in New Mexico later. In this pasture, it was all bare ground, and I used a root cutter to take out some bushes, mesquite and huizache, and then I used the roller. Well, after I used the root cutter, we got some rain. So where the soil was softened by the root cutter, some grass grew. Then I used the roller, and this grass came up. So 2 years later, I was very excited. Look, my work, how it worked. This tree is the same. So when I was taking this picture, I turned my back, the other side of the fence, where I didn't do any of the machinery, but I changed the herd management, and this is what I found. The huizaches and mesquites were still there, but the grass was as good and as healthy, or even better, because this ecosystem is more keeps more the moisture and keeps cooler. We're talking in Tamaulipas. This is a very hot area over there. So the protection that we got from the bushes in summer was good for the grass. This is some transformations that we were able to see happening. And yeah, we have more rain there than we have here in New Mexico. I agree with that, but let's compare Tamaulipas with Tamaulipas, and then we compare New Mexico with New Mexico. The important thing here is that going from here to here was not accomplished by only resting it. It was accomplished by using it harder. Instead of 13 acres per animal unit, we lowered it to 9 acres for the animal unit, and then to 5 acres per animal unit. So using it more intensively, it turned from this to this. Yeah, we have, and we are in an area, 25 inches. This was average, and it was a little below average, and then a very exceptional year came and made all the work shown. Transformation the same 3 years. And then I understood that covering the bare ground, you will have, we will talk about biological succession, you will have plants that maybe you don't like, but you better keep them because those are the first stages for a recovery. There was a bush in this is my neighbor's ranch, and it was all bare ground. The only piece of grass that we found it protected by a little mesquite. So again, the same amount of rain falls here and here. The same amount of solar energy falls here than here. The same rain here and here, the same amount of shadow of light, as you want to see it, here and here. Why there is no grass here or here is because of the lack of management. We cannot blame these mesquites or these huizaches that there's no soil, there's no grass here. There's a few feet from it, there's another mesquite just the same size, and it's all covered with grass. After several years of good management, even underneath the bushes, we saw that the grass growing underneath the bushes was greener than the grass that was not protected. And as I told you, let's compare Tamaulipas with Tamaulipas. This is the ranch that I managed for 10 years, and these are the neighbors in a good year, and this is what they have. So yeah, in the ranch we had erosive processes going on, very severe. We had lost all this soil, but through management we stopped that erosion. So I told you about my neighbor. This is the ranch that I was managing, Buenos Aires, and this is my neighbors. And the clouds are not square, so we got the same rain. In fact, I was running more cattle than they did. I was standing, and from the height of my face, I took a picture with those cameras that you still have to develop. For those young people that don't know what I mean by developing a photograph, you have to Google it. But I took some pictures from just standing, and then I lower, and from the height of my knee, I took this second picture. So if you see this rock with a stick, is this rock with the stick. So it's exactly the same place. So with these pictures, I can identify the effects of continuous grazing. First, cattle are allowed to eat little plants. This plant was 1 or 2 inches tall, and it has already been chewed by a cow. And all of these presented chewed leaves. If you keep your grass short from the surface up, you will keep it short from the surface down. So you will have a soil with very low organic matter, and a soil without organic matter will crack. And those cracks, what will happen is that the little moisture you have, you will lose it faster. And then on top of that, the third effect is this rock seems to be like if somebody just put it on top of the surface. I'm pretty sure a few years ago, this rock was partially buried like this one. What happens is that a soil with no organic matter, with not cover, it rains, and the runoff will wash off the soil around this rock. So if you go to a place and you see the rocks like somebody put them on top, it's because erosion has been going on there. This is how it looked, the cattle grazing there in the ranch that I was managing. I want you to pay attention in these bushes and this bush. Yeah, we got 36 inches that year, but the year before, and the year before, and the year before, and the most important change, remember, we were in a 25 average rainfall. The most important change from having nothing to have a very little happened in a dry year. This used to be the horses' pasture, so there was absolutely nothing. And here it was where I found out that every year when it rains, you will have newborn plants. But the problem is that most of them die in the first year because the cattle is on top of them. Right here, you can see the plants that grew up this year. They were present the second year, and then the plants a year old and new plants, and the next year, plants 2-year-old, 1-year-old, and new plants, and then they became this grassland. It was just 4 years. And this picture is in 2003 when we got 36 inches of rain. My neighbor's ranch, this is what he got. By the end of the rainy season, he was already waiting for more rain, but no grass grew at all. So several years later, we have bare ground that has been covered. The erosion process has been stopped. So with this triangle vision, what we already saw what we expect from the ranch, what we need to know. Let's see what we need to do. We need to increase our grass production, which means cover your bare ground and let your plants grow bigger. We need to make pressure in genetics to have a very efficient herd, and we have to do expense control. If we have healthy grasslands and we put efficient cattle on top of them, and then we make a good money management, if we say yes to these 3 elements, we have 90% chances of success. But with only one no, it will lead us to a 90% chance of failure. So every time you see one of these screens with blue background, is because I'm changing gears, I'm changing the topic. This is, remember I told you it will be like a Y. This is one arm of the Y, the triangle vision. Now we will go to another vision of the same. By now, here on top, it says profit equals income minus expenses. Let's focus a little on income. So I will make this part of the screen a little bigger. It says profit equals incomes. Incomes, where they come from, depend of the herd size, which come from the total area that we have and the grazing system that we have. We will talk a lot about this. But that herd size, percentage of crop, how much they weigh, and the price that we get. So percent of crop is how many are born minus how many die. How many are born depends on nutrition and maternal traits. Nutrition comes from the energy, protein, mineral, vitamin that come from the forages and how we supplement. And the energy, protein from the forages depend on the quantity and quality, which depend on the physiological states, which depends from the season, the rainfall, which are not in our, we cannot manipulate them, but we can manipulate when we use a pasture, when we rest a pasture, how much animal impact we make in that pasture. How will we do it? With the number of paddocks that we can set the time of use and the time of rest, depending on the total area, topography. So all this I will go further in that same branch. Remember total area? So all these come from the grazing system, and from the grazing system, all the arrows point to nutrition, but now all the arrows point to a healthy ecosystem where there is an active soil, water cycle, energy cycle, and mineral cycle, and a biological community. I will go back to that this nutrition comes from the grazing system. This nutrition is exactly the same nutrition that will prevent death. This nutrition is exactly the same nutrition that will produce a good weight for sale. And another way, so is 1, 2, 3, 4, and if we don't want deaths from toxic weeds or from predators, we better have a healthy ecosystem which come from a grazing system. So in these 4 variables, nutrition or the grazing system has affected it 5 times. That's how important it is. And the expenses, we will not focus on them, but that's the other side of the equation for profits. So if income comes from the number of cows, percentage of weaning, weight, and price, what happens if we are very good marketers and we can convince buyers to buy our cows for 15 cents more than market price? It will increase our income 12%. What if we don't care about the price? We focus on producing more per calf. Okay? As we produce heavier calves, the price, because of the slide, will go lower. But anyways, producing bigger calves, we will produce more income. What if we don't focus neither price, neither weight, but in the quantity? Let's make our cows more efficient. If we turn from 80 to 90%, that represents 20% increase in our income. It's impossible, or it's very difficult to increase this without increasing also this. And let's leave the price low, but yeah, just working on your cattle, you can make 35% more income. Is that attractive enough? Well, yeah, it's attractive, but what happens if instead of running 100 cows, you run 200 cows? And please listen to me. Years ago, I was one of those who will try to stay away from those people who will tell you, run more cattle in your country. I thought that if I had 100 cows and I put 110, I will not have 100 cows well fed and 10 not well fed. I will have 110 not well fed cows. But when I started doing rotational grazing and I found out the real potential of my pastures, I got convinced that it's possible to grow your herd according to the growth of your grass. And this is what I'm trying to make the point. This is where the two visions merge, the one from the synoptic chart and the one from the triangle. Working here is marketing. Working in these two areas is working in your cattle, but working for this is grazing. And grazing is ways more, the impact is ways bigger than whatever you can do in these three areas put together. Where do I get the idea that you can run 200 cows in a pasture that traditionally has run 100? Well, the NRCS has made a very important work measuring and describing the ecological sites. And each one of these ecological sites has a description. And most of those descriptions come with a chart like this. They say that when it's in bad shape, it produces 500 pounds per acre. But if you get it to the better shape, it's 1400. This is almost 3 times. Even if you go from bad to regular, you're talking about twice as much. And again, I was one of those that could not believe it until I lived it. So what it takes to go from this to this? It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes lack of rain. I agree. But it takes mismanagement. And if you are going to buy or sell this ranch compared to this, how much can you sell it, or how much would you be willing to offer for it? What's the stocking rate? If you run 100 cows here, could you run more here? I think so. And those cows will take less money out of your pocket if you're running them on this and this. It's the same pasture, it's the same ranch, but it's been several years of good management. Now, here in New Mexico, something like this is going on. Some will say, okay, this is a good grama grass pasture. It looks good. From a distance, it looks good. Okay, let's change the perspective just a little bit. See what you see. Once we change the focus, we start seeing a lot of bare ground. Do you see any young plants? Will you say that those plants that you see are as big as they can? With this image that you have in front of your eyes, do you think there is room for twice as much plants? Maybe 50% taller? I think so. So what it takes to go from this to this? Well, again, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes rain, but neither the time or the rain are in our hands. What is in our hands? The management. Again, how much more money per acre, the stocking rate, or the production expenses will be able. This is how I left that ranch in 2012 when I came to New Mexico. The grass was as tall as the hood of the pickup. And I quit using pictures that I take. Okay, this is how the cattle looked like when they were grazing. But more than pictures that I take, I want to rely on sources that I cannot manipulate. These are Google Earth images. From 1998, this is the ranch that I was managing. And if you see, it melts or it camouflages with the rest of the area. It's the same color. Well, after 12 years of my management, if you Google your eyes, you will see the different color between this and the surrounding areas. This different color means more grass, more vegetation of all kinds, mesquite, huizache, but because we have more vegetation, we have cougar, we have deer, we have foxes, bobcats, falcons. We had a lot of biodiversity that nobody else had. And this is something that I cannot manipulate. And when God allows you to make a footprint in his creation like this, I am very, very thankful. So this is another video in my place here in New Mexico. This place comes from nothing. 12 years ago, when I came here, there was nothing. That's why I was able to buy it. You will see biodiversity. You will see young plants of many different species. And you will still see a lot of bare ground, but the bare ground shows new plants growing in it. So that's a very different scenario from the video that we just saw a few minutes ago. Another chart that comes with the site description goes like this. This is how it should be. And from this, it can be make it worse to this stage, or even worse to this stage. The process from going from this to this is 1A. What 1A says? Continuous heavy grazing. And from this to this is number 2. 2 and 3A, going from this to this, continuous heavy grazing and drought. Okay? That's a degradative process. But we also have an arrow that says you can go from this and recovery to here, or even from this eroded state to this, 1B and 3B, 1B, long-term prescribed grazing, and 3B, erosion control seeding, prescribed grazing. Okay, it showed that there are two kinds of grazing, continuous heavy grazing compared as opposed to prescribed grazing. Okay, overgrazing or continuous grazing versus prescribed grazing. There's a lot of work, a lot of actions that you can take that is not black and white. There's a lot of in between that you can do to stay away from a wrong grazing and try to get to a right grazing. The first thing that you need to change is your perspective. For many, grazing is feeding grazing animals with grasslands. If you change that perspective into management of grasslands using grazing animals, that's a big, big change. So this is where grazing becomes an art, because you have to keep a balance between harvesting your hay without killing plants, allowing new plants to grow. How you do it? With animal impact and then resting period. And in the other hand, you have to be aware of your animal performance. If you lean more one side or the other, it's very easy to run out of balance. So that's where grazing becomes an art. Let's talk a little more what is overgrazing, because for many, overgrazing is running too much cattle, and that's not true. Real overgrazing is this. You have a plant that has been chewed by a cow, and that plant has to sacrifice roots in order to promote a regrowth that will start capturing solar energy. When the energy that they capture balances with the root sacrifice, it quits sacrificing roots and it grows on its own for a while. And when it's fully grown, start restoring the roots. And when the roots are all restored, then it starts producing seed. If you let your cows come and chew these plants in this stage, or this stage again, that is overgrazing. The problem is that we see from surface up. We cannot see what's going on from surface down. So this plant and this plant might look very similar, but this plant has not the roots restored. How do we know that the roots are restored? When they start producing seed. So if you allow your cow to eat this plant or this, that is overgrazing. Overgrazing happens plant by plant, animal by animal. It doesn't happen in a whole pasture with a whole herd. It's an individual process. In the same pasture, you can be overgrazing your good grass plants and wasting your regular or your bad grasses plants. You can be overgrazing the plants closer to the drinker and wasting those plants in the opposite corner of the pasture. If you let that plant go over to the cycle again, it can recover, but it will take longer. Or if you keep your cattle there chewing and rechewing, this plant had to sacrifice more roots to make a second regrowth. And if that happens over and over again, it gets to the point that it sacrificed the whole plant, and that environment is the ideal for the invasion of shrubs and weeds. So we have overgrazing that equals continuous grazing, or continuous grazing equals overgrazing. When it happens, when you have cattle in a pasture, just because you have to have your cattle somewhere. If you go to a ranch, hey, why you have that cattle in that pasture? Because I need to have it somewhere. Not a purpose, not a project, no future vision, nothing. as opposed to prescribed grazing. Prescribed grazing takes into consideration circumstances, signs, or symptoms. With those circumstances and signs, it looks for a particular purpose that has to be achieved. And in order to achieve that purpose, you need to develop or to design a treatment. Sounds complicated, but I will try to make it simple. Circumstances. Imagine that a man gets sick and goes to the hospital. They will make question like, have you traveled out of the country? Well, if he recently went to a country where an illness is known to be going on, maybe that's not the problem, but it's worth considering, isn't it? Well, the same here. Vegetative type, moisture, temperature, daylight, status from last use, physiological stage. We cannot, they are not the problem. They are not subject to our input, but they are worth considering. Where I am, what can be done? Those are circumstances. After the circumstances, we go and look for signs or symptoms. For example, how far from the climax vegetation. You can find the climax description in the NRCS ecological site description. What's the age of the plants? Even the grasses or the bushes or the cactus, how old are they? How much bare ground? And if it's cracked, if it's hardened or is soft or is cracked, how is it? How are the erosive process? These vary from pasture to pasture or within a pasture. Symptoms are not the problem to attack. It's very important. It's very easy to get tangled trying to resolve to attack symptoms. Symptoms just show the effects of a good, of a bad, or a bad grazing. So for example, we have two different pastures. What symptoms can we see right here? We see almost the same amount of bare ground. But in this picture, we see young plants. Turpentine, which is not something that we or most of the ranchers like, but turpentine is young. There are some grasses that are young. The soil looks very hard. Right here we have old material, we have old bushes, and the mesquites are also not very old. Here we have some yuccas, we have old grasses, we have a little bit of grama grass. The bare ground is soft. If in a scale from 1 to 10, maybe this pasture is in a 6 and this pasture is in a 4 by now. But this is very important. How it will like within a few years if the management keeps the same. This pasture might be in a 4, but it comes from a 0. The soil tells you, the young plants tell you that they are new. There was nothing there a few years ago. And this pasture might be in a 6, but it comes from an 8. It was better a few years ago. And if the management keeps the same, this is headed to a 4, and this pasture is headed to an 8. So even though they have almost the same symptoms, they look almost the same, you need to be able to find out if the succession is positive or is negative. Once you have the symptoms, you go through your purposes. Maybe your purpose is just to harvest your hay. Maybe your purpose is to do a soil cross treatment. Open bushes for grass growth, trample on materials. I've been there. Sometimes I keep the cattle in a pasture because that's the only pasture where I can keep my cattle alive. The regenerative process comes to a second term when the cattle needs to stay alive during a drought. But as soon as we get some rain, I get back to my program or to my restorative point of view. So, hey, why you have the general purpose is the well-being of landscape, herd, and family, and how you find your purpose is just answering this simple question: why I have this cattle in this pasture? Why you have your young heifers in this good quality grass? Because I want them to grow fast. Why you keep most of your cattle, your cows, your heifers, your horses, your bulls, all together in a little pasture in the corner of the ranch? Because I want to rest the most part of the ranch to provide. So depending on the purpose, I can answer this question, and many ranchers cannot answer this question: why is that cattle in that pasture? When you go through analysis of circumstances, signs and symptoms, you find a purpose, it's easier to make the treatment. Let's say this is a soil cross treatment. There was absolutely nothing here. It was not attractive to the cows to go to this corner of the ranch. So with electric fence, I made them come to this pasture. It was not attractive, but I made them come. Then this is my electric fences, and I brought a couple of bottles of water, and I dropped the content in the piece of land that had been trampled and the land that hadn't. And this is what I found. This stain became this, and if you make your bottle 4 units, this is 70 square units compared to 15.75 square units, which is 22%. Well, the same amount of water infiltrated in 22% of the area than this. How big a difference that makes? This year I went to move my cows. So my cows had just got into these 2 or 3 acres, maybe 50 seconds before I took this picture. And we had 2/10 of a rain. With 2/10, this soil was ready to start the runoff. There were some puddles, and if we just had 2 or 3 more tenths, it will be running off. So in the pasture where the cattle had already been, they had trampled the cross, and the same 2/10 of rain didn't make any puddle. This soil was ready to get maybe 2 or 3 more tenths without running off. That's how important in an area like this in New Mexico, where the average is supposed to be 12 to 14 inches of rain, how you handle the 2 or 3 tenths that you get is very important. And by the way, if the average is 12 to 14 inches of rain, we have been 7 years in a row ways below that average. And in those 7 years of drought, we have seen amazing changes in the cover of the soil, just waiting for an average rain year to show all the work that we've been doing. So after all that process of analyzing circumstances, symptoms, and purposes, then we come to the prescription. And this is where I'm trying to make it very, very easy. Prescription comes out of 4 main variables: how many animals, in how big an area, for how long. That's the grazing period. And then the 4th is when will cattle come back. With those 3 questions, you make a prescription. If prescribed grazing is the clue to go from producing 500 or 1,400 pounds per acre, this is how you do it. You need to be sure what the difference between stocking rate and stock density. Stocking rate is the animals in a ranch or a pasture or a section for a whole year. For example, this ranch runs 14 cows per section or 200 cows in a 10,000 acres ranch. That's stocking rate. Stock density is very different. is animal pounds per area for a period of time. For example, 85 yearlings, 600 pounders in 2 acres for 12 hours. That's animal stock density. Why is it so different? Even though we can say there are different sides of the equation. For example, this is stocking rate, and this is stock density. We talk about time, number of heads in an area. Time can be, and I deliberately, I did it very vague, very short, moderate, long, very long. That can mean very different things for you and me in different parts of the world. But I don't care. I made it like this because I don't want it to be a recipe. I want you to find out what is very short for you, what is moderate, what is very long for you. But for example, stocking rate of 14 cows per section. A section is 640 acres, 40 heads for 360 days. That means that every acre produces the food or the grass that an animal needed for 8 days, or eight animals for 1 day. What if you reduce it from 365 days to 21, increase from 14 to 38, and lower it to 100 acres? That's exactly the same 8 animal days per acre. What if you lower it to 2 days, 120 head in 30 acres? That's exactly 8 animal days per acre. So this is, in my personal, some people might differ from my personal view, but this is stocking density and this is stocking rate. The density explains ways more what's going on than the stocking rate. What if you put 100 cows in 2.5 acres for 4 hours? You get the same. But even though it's the same number, it has very different effect in the ecosystem. For example, this is a little pasture. This is my ranch, and this is the highway. The red line is the end of the ranch, and this is the railroad tracks. This is a pasture, 270 acres. I put 85 yearlings. They were 600 pounders, 2 or 3 daily movements, 2 or 3 acres per move. I made 2 full rounds in 4 months. With this number, I ran the equivalent to 40 cows per section year round, when the normal stocking rate is 12 to 14. So you were wondering how possible is it to run twice as much cattle? This is how. We will change gear again. We saw how to improve the productivity. In order to do so, we need to understand what happens in the pasture. What is a pasture? What is a grassland? A grassland is a biocommunity which grows on a soil, receives water, receives solar energy, and uses minerals, and it's always in a succession process. We need to be very confident that we know what each one of these elements mean. Soil. It begins with a mineral basis that every farmer that is aware of what kind of soil he's working is familiar with this triangle. That mineral basis, you add some organic matter, and organic matter brings life into that mineral basis. That life comes from, and that organic matter is the environment where life can be produced, and that organic matter comes from that living organisms. All this improves soil with organic matter. And a soil with organic matter increases a lot the amount of water that it's able to store. More organic matter, more moisture available, more living organisms. Less organic matter, less moisture available, less living organisms. it can be a virtual cycle or a wrong cycle. The mineral cycle, an ecosystem with a lot of coverage will be, the mineral will be cycling from the roots to the leaves and again to the soil, and they are tending always to lixiviate. But if we don't have the roots or the plants, they will just lixiviate and we will lose them. We will end up with a very poor soil. The water cycle, surface with coverage, will allow the water to infiltrate into the underground flow, and we will have evaporation from the soil. We will have evapotranspiration from the plants and feeding the clouds, and the clouds going back to the soil. And how important is the coverage for keeping the moisture? 3 days after rain, the soil covered by grass is still wet. And then the energy cycle. The plants that make photosynthesis capture the sun, and they are used as food for grazing animals, and then predators, and then scavenger, and then putrefaction. The same underground. The main purpose of this energy cycle diagram is to tell us that the longer the time, the more area of solar panel, density of plants. We need a lot of density of plants with the biggest leaf area possible in order to have solar panels active. And if we have warm season grasses and cool season grasses, we prolong the time that we have green grass capturing energy in our pastures. So the soil coverage affects and is affected by the mineral cycle, affects and is affected by the water cycle. The soil coverage affects and it's affected by the energy cycle. And through grazing, we affect the biological community, which is the one that determines the soil coverage. So one way or another, everything we do through grazing will affect positively or negatively to the mineral cycle, to the water cycle, the energy cycle, and then again, our grazing will be affected by the well-being of those cycles. This is a biological community. We have different species. Some are good grasses, some are regular grasses, some are poor grasses, some are weeds and bushes, and there's room for bare ground. If the tendency of the succession is that the good grasses are disappearing and the bare ground is growing, then we are in a degradative process. If the sequence tells us that the good grasses are showing up or increasing, and we are fighting and beating the bare ground, we are in a regenerative process. And this continuous sequence is also documented in the National Ecological Site Handbook from the NRCS. So it's nothing that I made up. This used to be a grama grass pasture. Where is the grama grass now? We have some yuccas, we have some old grasses that the cattle didn't like, but the grama grass is abused. If not, if still there. So we went from how to run a ranch to what we need to know about a grassland. Now we will go plant by plant. And this graph, as simple as it looks, embraces or encompasses all the wisdom that you need to know to make your ranch profitable. Let's assume for a while that we're not talking about grass. Let's assume that we are talking about stock in the stock market. And they show you this graph for a specific company. Will you buy actions? Will you buy stocks from that company, knowing that you put your money right here, and within a period of time, your money will be there? How wise will it be to put your money here and pull it out right here. Will that be wise? Not at all. You let your money grow to its fullness, and then when it gets here, you look for another company that shows that where you can put your money back here to make this grow again. Let's back to grass. Let's go back to grass. Is it wise to cut or to chew or to eat your grass when it's here? That's what happens in continuous grazing. The cows are longing for grass in this stage. This is the richest, the softest, the most palatable grass that they can find. And this is what they are looking for. If you have continuous grazing, this is where you are losing money. Every plant that you eat here, if you just let it rest for a while, a couple of weeks more, you will have twice as much or 3 times as much. And this is affected by species, by age, soil, moisture, daylight, and temperature. For example, daylight, long days in summer allows more growth. Short days in winter, the grass doesn't grow too much because there's not enough solar energy. On top of that, temperature. Cold temperature in winter will not allow the growth, and excessive heat will also harm the growth. And then moisture. We have a period of drought, and then we have a period of rain. But the purpose of this graph is to show that the grass, even though there are three elements, you will always be wasting 2 of them because the grass will always grow depending on the limitant element. Right here is moisture, then it can be temperature, and then it can be daylight. But you will always be wasting 2 of them, and the grass will be growing to the minimum possible. Quantity versus quality. We already said when the grass is blooming, that's when you have the most quantity still with the good quality. So let's make it more easier to identify where the grass is. Let's put it into phases. You want to graze, the optimus will be to graze only plants in 5 or 6. But in a ranch where you get the first rain, the whole ranch will start growing, and the whole ranch will get to the phase 5 and 6 at the same time. So I would rather go and harvest grass in phases 6, 7, or 8, but I will try to stay away from harvesting grass in phases 2, 3, and 4. The total size of the plant is not a concern for the plants. The plants are designed, or their objective is to mature and produce seed. For example, this year, it didn't rain. And when it rained, the grass grew for maybe a week. And within a week, you don't see them in fullness, but if you see the shadows, you can see the spikes. So these grass were an inch tall and was already producing seed, because producing seed is the main purpose of any plant. So if the circumstances are not the optimus, they will hurry up and produce seed and get out of the equation for this year. Hopefully next year we will be better. So in phase 6, 7, or 8, cattle comes in. We're talking about good grazing. If we can harvest in a few hours or a few days and leave the grass like this, and then 30 or 90 days of rest. For people in Kansas or Alabama or Georgia, where they have a lot of moisture, this cycle is easy to accomplish. Every 30 or 90 days, you can come to the same pasture. Here in the desert, with very erratic rain, we need to harvest more heavily, but that allows us to make longer resting periods. By now, I'm trying to get to a year and a half resting period, which means that every pasture will rest, half of the pastures will rest a whole year, a whole rainy season, and the other half will rest 2 rainy seasons. So when we get there, we will be very safe against the droughts. So what happens when the cattle gets into a pasture? Obviously, they harvest, and if it's in a short period of time, they don't overgraze. They crack and trample the soil, they trample the organic matter, and they get seeds in contact with soil, because many times the seeds fall on top of all grass, and they cannot sprout there. And they incorporate and fertilize. What happens during the resting period? This is very important. Every plant that was grazed has the opportunity to regrow. Those plants from the good grasses are in the same circumstances than the regular and the bad grasses. They were all harvested, and now they are all resting the same. If there's adequate moisture and temperature, seeds in contact will germinate without being trampled, eaten, or plucked, so they can establish. And the trampled materials get mineralized and incorporated into soil as organic matter, together with urines and dung from cattle. So let's see grazing as a tool. We said that the plant to start a regrowth has to sacrifice roots. Those sacrificed roots are organic matter already injected into the soil. That feeds microorganisms, moisture retainer, soil particle binder. So by having a soil with a lot of organic matter, we capture more water, and the water can go to the aquifers. So we restore, with good soil, we can restore our aquifers. Just to have an idea how important is a healthy plant on top of the ground and how healthy are they on the bottom. Another example, and the important, as I told you before, what we see is what's going on. For example, it rains, the grass grows. Then comes winter, rainy season, dry season, rainy season, right? But every year we have a little bit of less grass. Why? Because the roots are coming shorter and shorter and shorter. So we see a low difference here, but the main damage that we are making ourselves is under the surface. So if we let that plant restore the roots, that new regrowth takes CO2 from the atmosphere, and it will open and crack the soil so the water can infiltrate more. Taking CO2 from the atmosphere, it cleans the air we breathe. And then if we use rationally that grass, the cows will transform that grass that we cannot eat into a very good protein source for human consumption. So 3 problems are solved with a good grazing. So again, the question is why you have that cattle in that pasture. As a thumb rule, if you say, I will use this pasture for 3 months, one of those months, the cattle will be eating good grass. The second month, they will be eating lower quality. And the third month, they will be eating scratch. But if you decide, okay, let's divide that pasture and use it for 3 weeks, okay? 1 week, they will be eating good grass. The second week, they will be eating regular grass. And the third week, they will be eating scratch. What happens to a cow that eats scratch for a whole week or for a whole month? They lose performance. But what if you subdivide your pasture and say, okay, let's keep it here for 12 hours? Well, 4 hours they will eat good grass, 4 hours they will eat regular grass, and 4 hours they will be eating scratch. What happens to a cow if it's eating scratch for 4 hours, and after those 4 hours she will be allowed to get to eat 4 hours good grass? Nothing. Nothing happens to that cow. So that's the where rotational grazing comes from or tries to achieve. This is a chart with a lot of information, but in order to make it more accessible, let's go to the graph. This chart, okay, the number of pastures, days in use, days in rest, how much time they use, percentage of time of rest, how much the percentage of harvesting. As I told you, if you have your cattle in a big pasture, by the time they are eating scratch, you will pull them out, and all this scratch will not be harvested. So you are not harvesting the 100% of production that you have. The overgrazing risk, when you are continuous grazing, you 100% you are overgrazing, and the animal impact is very low, not enough to promote good new plants to grow unless you get down here with a lot of pastures. So looking in a graph, time in use drops, time in rest rises fast. The risk of overgrazing drops in the first 10 or 12 pastures because you pull your cattle out of each pasture within 8 days. If you can take your cattle out of a pasture after 8 or 10 days that they got in, you are not allowing them to go and make a second bite on any plant. In 8 or 10 days, the plants have not grown enough to be attractive. If they have enough fully grown grass, they will not be attracted to new regrowing plants. So with somewhere in between 8 or 12 pastures, the risk of overgrazing drops. Well, by now you are not killing plants, but still you are not harvesting all you could. Your good harvest comes when you push your cows to eat the good, the regular, and the bad all together. And that starts happening here in 26, 28 pastures. But still, you are not promoting new plants as much as you could because you are not doing enough animal impact. Enough animal impact to crack the soil, as we saw the picture, or to promote new plants, start over 40 or 50 pastures. So according to how you use it, 1 or 2 pastures is continuous grazing. 3 to 4 pastures in a ranch, the Merrill system, is seasonal grazing. You go a little more than that, you go into rotational grazing. Then more pastures, you can say that you are doing semi-intensive grazing. From 25 to 6 to 70, you are doing intensive grazing. And more than 70, then you are doing ultra intensive. This is where you harvest everything, make a lot of animal impact, can make the longest resting period, so new plants have enough time to settle and produce and grow roots and settle and be strong for harvesting. So according to how much you harvest, all this, you give the cattle the opportunity to be selective. Even if you are here, you will find out that they didn't eat the leaves of the mesquites. They didn't eat some turpentine. Right here, you make them eat everything. Here in this area, somebody is common knowledge or common thought that if the cows eat turpentine, they will abort. I have seen my cows eat turpentine, but as long as they are eating turpentine mixed with grasses, they don't abort. They can do it. The problem is that you leave them in a pasture for so long that they go out of grass, and the only thing is they have is turpentine, and they eat turpentine. Yeah, they will abort because they are eating only turpentine. But when they eat non-selectively, good, bad, regular, altogether, they do good. For example, this is grama grass, and this is another grass. I don't know what grass it is, but as you can see, the cows don't like it. So in the long term, what species will prevail? The bad grasses will prevail because the bad grasses are allowed to produce seed. Nobody bother them. But the good grasses, like the grama grass, they suffer and suffer, abuse and abuse and abuse over and over again. And how much could this plant, the cow that came and showed this plant, how much did she eat? This plant had the potential to produce 3 or 4 times more, but they came in and ate it earlier. This grass, this is all material. It's no food anymore, but it was food sometime. It was food when it was green. Why the cows didn't eat it when it was green? Because it's a lower quality grass. They had grama grass accessible, so they ignored this grass. Now this grass is in the way for other grasses to grow. Nothing is growing beside it, and it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of space because the cattle were allowed not to eat it. So in this stage, for the future of the pasture, if you are in this area, you are doing degradative grazing. As I told you at the very beginning, for me, sustainable is not enough. Sustainable just means that you take out as much as you promote to be born new. And if the pasture is deteriorated and you are just taking out and allowing as much plants to be born, as many as you took off, that just remain, and the pasture will remain the same for the next few years. You need to do something regenerative, that you allow more plants to be born, more than those that you harvest, or more than those that you kill. If you don't kill any and you allow a lot to be born, then you're talking about regenerative. So with all of this, now I will share some of my experiences. The Rancho Buenos Aires that I worked there in Mexico for 15 years, in 10 years, we were allowed to bring the power energy, the power, electricity into the ranch with resources from the ranch. We were allowed to renew the pipeline. All the water system was renewed. The whole ranch was fenced with tall fence for deer, where we were able to renew some of the worst parts of that fence, not to mention all the electric and barbed wire fences that we made. We were able to build a new barn, new horse stalls, new pens, new houses for the workers. In the owner's house, we built a swimming pool, a kiosk. So we were able to do improvements in the ranch with the resources produced in the same ranch. A ranch that I ran for a couple of years. It was impressive. This is the ranch land app that showed you the history of your property, if you know how to use it. Something interesting here is that in the 2 years that I managed it, even though they were a dry year and a very regular year, I left that ranch with better coverage than what they got in 2015 or 17 with more than 20 inches of rain. With half of it, the coverage that I left that ranch in 2 years was greater. And our ranch, my family's ranch, Taiwan Creek Ranch in New Mexico. This is it. And something very interesting is happening. It's supposed that the bare ground should be opposite to the coverage. When the coverage grows, the bare ground reduces. Well, here, bare ground and coverage went down. What happened? Well, we had coverage, but didn't grow because the rain was not enough. So from the satellite, it looked like bare ground. And then both went up, new coverage, even though it seems that the bare ground is growing. I'm pretty sure in the next year, this will stay going up, and the bare ground will come down. The most something very interesting that this app showed. By now, I'm going to tell you this is from years ago, and this is more current. But this green stain looks very similar to this green stain. And this is the creek, looks very similar to this. And this green stain, similar to this. This is from 2015 with 22 inches of rain. And this is from 2022 with 11 inches of rain. So I'm very happy that half of the rain made the ranch look almost the same, while our neighbors with 20 inches of rain, they look really green compared to us, but with 11 inches of rain, they didn't look so good compared to us. So something is going on in this ranch that is not going on out of it. So talking about erosion, well, this is the pasture that I just told you that I already use with an equivalent of 40 cows per section. And I have the blessing of having this creek coming into our northeast corner all the way and leave the ranch in the southwest corner. It comes into the ranch this wide, maybe 60 yards wide. A few miles into the ranch, that's how it looks. And even though this is the main creek, but there is another secondary creek here, and they merge right here. So where I took this picture, they are both together. And this is how this creek looks like. Because we are gathering all the erosion from our neighbors north, they look like this. All this soil, we are gathering it here, and it looks like this right here. About 5 years ago, we dropped some tires into the creek. I don't recommend to do it. It was a mistake that I did. Those tires, when they decompose, they become toxic. So I'm not recommending to do so. But I did that mistake. But if in 5 years we have gathered all this material, something is going on very interesting in this ranch. So how we do it? How we did it? We started doing rotational grazing, kind of holistic management. But then I knew about the ultra intensive, and to do the ultra intensive, you need lanes, 200 yards lanes where you can roll your portable fence and take your cattle little by little. It worked so good here that I made it here, I made it here, and I made it wherever I could. But, and this is how it looks. This is me moving the cattle. I just have to take care of the fence. The cattle move themselves. I'm just taking my sticks and rolling my wire, and the cattle, they come by themselves. In the herd, you will see cows and yearling heifers, yearling steers, horses, mares with their foals. It was not the breeding season, so the only thing you won't see there are the bulls. But in the whole ranch, this is all my herd. The rest of the ranch is resting. And it's incredible how, even though it looks the same, they know where the fresh food is. We're gonna Okay. So it works so good, but I have this area. These are dunes, very soft sand. I cannot drive my pickup there. I maybe not even, well, maybe an ATV, but I don't have an ATV. So I cannot go and move my cows twice a day in that pasture. On top of that, I have all this area, all this creek that I cannot cross it with electric fences. So how do I do it? I know the benefits of rotational grazing. How I do it? That's where virtual fences come. Virtual fences are very useful. They have been in the market for several years, and they are progressing very fast in the features they offer. There are several companies offering them and different options. For example, the company that I use, and I'm talking about virtual fences as a whole. I'm not intending to do publicity to any of those, but the one that I use, they have a color. The color communicates with a tower, and the tower communicates with your phone or your computer. With this, as long as the tower is in cell phone service area, it reaches all the cows and it communicates with your phone. Some other companies, the color itself communicates with your phone, but the cow needs to be in cell phone service area. If they are behind a hill or something, you lose control of them. The company that I use, they rent you the color, and the rent includes the technical support. The tower is sold separate. The other companies, they sell you the colors and charge you a monthly or yearly fee for the technical support. Renting the colors for me is better because if with this technology is growing fast. So if within a year or two they come up with a more efficient, smaller, or whatever better color, they will just take the old ones and bring you the new ones, and you keep paying your rent and you're fine. If you buy them and this company comes with a new one, they will sell them to you as they come with a new one. Some use solar battery chargers, some use replaceable batteries, all of them provide location, but some of them are working on providing you the heartbeat of the cattle, the temperature of the cattle, and they have different kind of warnings. So we put some colors and let them out. We need to train them. And the technical support provides you a software where you design your pastures as you want them. And then once your pastures are designed, you can turn them on and off as you need from your phone or computer. The cows have to be trained. There's a beep. You can hear that beep come from the colors. And there's also some cows trying to come back, and they get the shock like this. So the fences allow cows to go one way without giving them any shock or any impulse. But when they are coming the opposite direction, that's when they get the shock. Let's be honest, virtual fences are just as any other fence. They have their flaws, they have their advantages. One of the advantages is that they can be set in a creek, on a hill, through the bluffs or through forests, where building a wire fence will be impossible. It will be good to strengthen the virtual fence with some other infrastructure in your ranch. For example, we are planning or we are working in making at least a holding pen around every drinker. So by enclosing your drinkers, you help your virtual fences. If a cow goes out she has to come back to the herd to drink water with them. And every time they cross the fence, every time they will get the impulse. Some, for example, compared to electric fences, there are some cows that get used to jump the electric fence, and they don't get any impulse every time they jump it. And if they jump it and break it, they break it for everybody else. With this virtual fence, every time they want to go through it, they will get the impulse, and there's no way that they break it for everybody else. Yeah, be ready to find some colors on the ground. Be ready to replace batteries. So having pens available where you can at least have a little alleyway that you can use to change batteries or replace colors will be good. We're talking about even if you have 85 or 90% efficiency, you will have to replace some batteries, you will have to replace some colors.
Jorge, are you still there?
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened.
And we can't see your screen anymore. I didn't know how many more slides you had.
Okay, let me. What about there?
Yep, we can see it again.
Okay. Yeah, I was talking about 85 and 90% efficiency. You still have some work to do, but I was there in Mexico when the electric fences became popular, and there were a lot of problems that we had to fight. The same with this new technology. We must be willing to work on it and encourage those companies to make it more efficient. We are almost coming to the end. The purpose is to be able to use around every drinker, use it as a pasture. So by now, this yellow and this red is a single pasture. And if I can only divide it into 4, we'll be fine. This is another pasture, and if I can divide it into 3, and even those divisions, you can do ultra-intensive grazing with the colors. So within 2 days, tomorrow will be yesterday, so better start now. We saw that with a good grazing, with virtual fences or electric fences or whatever, a good grazing will improve the water supply, the air quality, food for humanity, erosion control, and better habitat. Should be enough that if we manage a piece of land, our good stewardship should be enough motive to do it. If it's not enough, we can make a better living by doing so. If that's not enough, these are exactly the tools that we need to defend our industry, because our industry is under attack. A lot of people want us to quit producing cows. And if that's not enough, we have a lot of possible incomes from environmental services. By now, I have made a contract with a company that is willing to buy my carbon credits, and they sampled my soil, and I found that I have an average of from 43 to 50. I have an average of 7 tons per acre of carbon to put into the soil. If we can turn the whole ranch blue, that's what we're talking about. 7 tons. times 8,800 acres times $20 a ton is good money. Yeah, I have to share it with the carbon credit company. I have to share it with the state land office, but still, if you get a chunk of money on top of improving your productivity, that's very attractive. So I ask, are our grasslands healthy? Not by now, but now we know how to do it. Can we compete with other countries with this kind of grasslands? I'm willing to compete. What's the strategy? Well, each one of us, every acre under our management, every animal we take care of, we are the cattle industry. So everything we do will matter. Our industry needs heroes. What's a hero? This is the definition from the dictionary. But for me, a hero is a person who makes what he's supposed to do at the right time, motivated by the common well-being of his or her people. So I urge you to do what you need to do to increase the productivity in your places and to be restorative. Thank you very much. And now, if we have time, we can go to questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Jorge. I know, yeah, it's 7:30, so if people need to head out, that's totally fine. But if people want to stay on and ask questions, we could stay on for another 15 minutes or so. I didn't see any come through the chat, but if people want to raise their hands, and I'll call on you and you can ask your question.
If in the meantime you allow me to run a little video.
Yeah, go for it.
About the erosion control. So they can ask and we can talk. It's a three minute long video.
All right, I'm not seeing any hands yet. I do have a couple questions that came in through the registration form. I can ask those. So one of those, Jorge, is how does virtual fencing impact slowing down and or a sense of urgency in ranching? Have you found there is a desire to have less human interaction with cattle and more time spent elsewhere while using virtual fencing? And then if virtual fencing is saving you time, what activities are getting more of your time?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah, the youngest generation, they are very willing to use their phones or the computer. It was my dream when I was a kid to be able to run my cattle from a computer. If we can do that now, it's just awesome. So you can do it even when you are out of your place. You can do it from when you're on vacation. You can still have control of your cattle. So I don't see why not more people will be just jumping into it. If you need to do rotational grazing, that was one of the main reasons I got into it. I was making the mental exercise. In my place, I run 8,800 acres, but there are some ranches that are 100,000 acres. You cannot convince a ranch owner to build miles and miles and miles of electric fence to use them for a week or two, and then come back to the same pasture within a year or year and a half. It's not worth it. So how can I do rotational grazing in big scale? This is how. Even if they usually say, okay, I will run 50 cows in this pasture for the whole year. Well, that pasture, you can still run those 50 cows in that pasture the whole year, but rotating and giving each acre of that pasture the rest they need. You can do rotational grazing even in your traditional management. Some say, Jorge, you cannot ask me to put all my herd together because my water sources are not enough. Okay, don't do it. You keep 50 cows in one pasture, 50 cows in another. Do rotational grazing in each one of those pastures using collars. And you don't have to divide it into 50. If you just divide it pasture in 20 or 8, or you're doing progress. So they talk about the urgency. The urgency is there. Our grasslands need to be restored as soon as possible. So if virtual fence, if you compare the prices, is cheap. And if it works in your place, contact the company you want and ask them if they will be useful for you in your environment, and go ahead. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, I thought that was great. And that reminds me, one other person had asked in an email, like, what is the cost of these?
Well, as I told you, I'm not intending to make publicity to any company, but the company I work with, they charge $40, $30 the rent a year, plus 10 for the battery, which makes 40, and that's for. They say that a battery, if you don't run it very intensively, might last a year or a year and a half. If you run it very intensively, they are always close to the virtual fence, beeping and giving shocks. It might last 3 or 4 months. So if you consider the color, let's say 2 batteries a year, $50 a cow a year. Compare that to how much cake you feed your cows. Compare that to how much you spend on your feed truck, tires, gas, fixing. Compare that to electric fencing. Compare that to moving a portable electric fence twice or 3 times a day. That's a big advantage, and it's not expensive.
Awesome. Then the last question I have that I see here is asking about if there's any progress with using virtual fencing with equines, and what are the issues with using virtual fencing with equines. I'm not sure if you'd know that, Jorge, but I know you have horses and had them in that rotational grazing with electric fencing.
Yeah, well, the good thing with horses is that they are more herding than cattle. So I will sacrifice one of them. If you just put one collar, you know where the whole herd is, and they want. If you choose the right leader mare, they will follow her. To be honest, I haven't used it in horses yet, and people from the company tell me that nobody has used them yet on horses. So I don't know if the shock is too much, but to be honest, I'm willing to try it.
One more just came in the chat from Eric. In your ranch, would you have preferred to do virtual fence versus your existing electric fence?
Well, yeah, with my existing virtual electric fences, I'm used to move them. I have access with my pickup. I can go there in 5 minutes, and I can do it. I'm planning on using virtual fences more in the areas that I have not pickup access, which is the sand dunes or the creek. Keeping my electric fences will allow me to train whenever I have a group of replacement heifers, for example. I can train them on my electric fences to obey the virtual fences. It's supposed that if they grew up with their moms following the collars, they should be easier to train. But yeah, I'm planning on keeping most of the electric fences that I have now.
Cool. And then there's another one. How long does it take for the cattle to adapt to the virtual fence?
One day. As soon as they get the first shock, usually the training process takes about 2 or 3 days, but it's impressive how they learn so fast. So yeah, in the company that I work, they have a very specific pattern to follow the training. If you follow their instructions, those cows will be trained. They have a specific protocol how to train them, and it's very good.
Awesome. Well, I'll give it another minute or so. If folks want to ask questions, you can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. Otherwise, we can move on to that video you wanted to show, Jorge.
Okay. So this is the creek, and I want you to pay attention how wide it comes into the ranch.
We still see your presentation. So you might need to stop sharing and reshare.
Can you see it?
Nope, we just see the presentation, the PowerPoint.
Ah, okay. Let me see. Okay.
Okay, I think now I see the Taiban Creek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me run it from the beginning. Okay. I want you to see the Taiwan Creek, how wide this is by drone, and it's almost the same place. For example, this curve is this. And see how wide it comes into the ranch. And then sorry, it will start all over again. So how unstable these areas were. For example, this area is this. There was nothing holding the sand. And how wide it came into the ranch. There's some vegetation, and it was 2 years ago, so by now it should be better. Further into the ranch, the creek is already reduced because of the erosion control. It was wide in 2014. Now it's all, this area is established. This. And I still have a lot of bare ground to cover. We're working on it. But from here on, the creek is this wide. When it was really, really wide, now it's a foot wide, all the rest of the ranch. Well, that's all I have. Again, I apologize for being a little late. Thank you for your attention. I hope that it's been useful for somebody. You have my contact or my email. If any question, if I can be useful for anything else, I will appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jorge, and thanks everyone for coming. I did record this, so I'll share the link for the recording once we upload it to YouTube, and then I can also share in an email Jorge's email address if you all want to follow up with him and ask additional questions. But thank you all for coming, and I posted the evaluation in the chat, so if you can just take a minute or two to fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. But otherwise, I hope you all have a great Thursday evening.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Nina.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great night.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.